Big 12 Media Days live from Frisco, Texas. Sort of a home game for our friend from West Texas in Lubbock. Texas Tech coming back 8-5 a year ago, tied for 5th in the Big 12. But I'm going to tell you something. With the players they have coming back, with the money that's been infused into the program and a rampant hit in the transfer portal, could Joey McGuire and Texas Tech be this year's Arizona State and come up and represent the Big 12 in a college football playoff? Well, lucky for us, we don't have to guess anymore. We'll just ask the head coach who's joining us now. Coach, great seeing you as always.
Man, thanks for having me, man.
We talked about how quick the offseason was and how much you guys are excited to get back into it. For you, when you're going into this season with what you have coming back, as I mentioned, Barry Merritt, quarterback, and a host of other players, how do you feel you stack up right now going into the season?
You know, we feel really good about our roster, and one reason is we have great depth on the offensive line and defensive line, and that's something that we haven't had, and so I think that's really important. And then we added some really good guys in the secondary, so we can't wait, man. We've got a great opportunity. Now we just got to go seize that opportunity.
And that's a guy who's smiling that knows he had a lot of fun this offseason with a pretty successful alum that helps out. And that's the day and age in college football, Coach. You know when you have the resources, you can take advantage of building your roster. And you've done a good job at that, bringing in Hudson back from Texas A&M. There are players out there that are ready to play. So what are the challenges of finding the right guy to fit what you need to have them do?
I think the biggest thing, starting in the spring, very first meeting, we talked about keeping the main thing. And one, be on time and be where you're supposed to be. And then two, when you walk, whatever we're asking you to do, whether you're on the football field, in the weight room, when we talk about our recovery, everything is empty the tank. Like, here is the standard, and if you're not living up to that standard right there, you've missed the mark. And so that's the main thing. And our guys, we're an old team. We really are. We're an old team whenever it comes to guys that have been in this program, and Baron Morton and Jacob Rodriguez, but we're also an old team and bringing in some vets and for some other places. And so those guys understand, and they've been awesome. What's been the coolest is what kind of men we brought in the building and how willing they are to mentor some of our really good young players that are going to be exciting to watch, and they're growing because of the old guys.
I think it's probably overstated at this point. Look, Texas Tech has deep pockets. We know that. Hey, great. That's a fantastic thing to utilize at your advantage. But I think making sure that you have the right guys, the right pieces. How do you make sure, knowing that, we can go out and get pretty much anybody we want. Finances are not a problem.
Right.
But we don't want to get the guy that is exclusively worried about finances. How do you balance that when you're having those conversations with guys that are thinking about Texas Tech against some other big spenders in the sport?
Well, you got to do it fast, and you've got to ask the right questions. But I think you got to find out what their why is. I think that's really important, why they're doing this. And then I think the other thing is you got to figure out, and you got to ask the right people, do they love football? I mean, you guys know how hard this is. And for you to reach the goals that you're trying to reach, you got to be surrounded by guys that want to be pros. Of course, they all want to play in the NFL, but there is a way that you carry yourself in any way of life whenever it comes. So you got to find that out. Are they serious about it? And you got to find it out really fast. I think those are the two things. We got to find out their why, and then we got to find out if they love football.
Coach, speaking of why, we know there's no shortage of star power and talent when it comes to your players, but you had to replace a couple coordinators in the offseason.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit why Mac left which and why Shield Wood.
Well, you got to be crazy if you don't understand that the Red Raider Nation understands offensive football. And so you better bring somebody in that knows how to score points. And, I think he was number 6 last year in the country at Texas State. He comes from a little bit of an air raid background because Eric Morris was his first boss. So he has that. It's going to be really interesting because he also has some run and shoot elements in the offense. He has some of Art Browse's wide splits with the receivers. And so excited about that. But we had to bring somebody in that understands. I told him the last thing whenever he accepted the job, I said, you need to understand, you may have more pressure on you than I have on me.
Points matter
because points matter in Lubbock, Texas. And then, I needed a guy like Shield Wood who he's been successful everywhere he's been with a different roster, but whenever I sit down and talk to him, he's a very detailed A to B to C. This is how we're going to do it. This is what install looks like. And me being a defensive guy, us having such a change at the roster, I needed somebody that had that to where I felt comfortable, to where I could say, look, I'm going to concentrate on building this football team. You concentrate on the defensive side of the ball. He's been absolutely incredible.
It's funny when you hear coaches talk about building rosters nowadays in college football, because candidly, that's what it is. I mean, if you hit on a portal class like Mike Norvell did a couple of years ago, you should be in the college football playoff. Then if you don't hit on a portal class the next year, you're going to struggle. So now coaching for you used to be dominant here at Cedar Hill and DFW. You go to Texas Tech or Texas Tech now and you understand what it takes. But when you're building the roster and trying to build the continuity, that's got to be completely different than anything you and your staff has had to do in the years prior.
No, it is. It's and you got to trust the people around you. The one thing that Matt Rule, that I learned from him, is you've got to surround yourself with great coaches, and you got to trust that they're going to develop the players. I think we have a really good coaching staff, but I've got to trust my personnel staff.
Yeah.
And that's totally different. Like everybody used to talk about your recruiting staff. They still are your recruiting staff, but now they're your personnel because you are building a roster, and you've got to trust those guys that they're getting those questions answered. They're bringing in the right guy. And then I told my staff, our very first meeting, my job is to create the culture, the bond, because we're still playing a game.
That's right.
That bad things happen on every snap and good things happen, and how your team's going to respond is how close they are and how much they care about each other, and that's what I have to do. And so that's been a big part of this offseason, of different things, finding creative ways for these guys to spend time away from each other that maybe normally we didn't do in the past.
Looking at Baron Morton and him being back, I don't think anyone in college football has had to endure more challenges the last couple of years with injury. It's just been heartbreaking. I don't know what other word to use. It feels like now, though, with your commitment to the offensive line, the depth you have there, the protection will be better. The balance, because of some of the additions you made in the run game, potentially could be better. What does Baron need to do this year to help elevate the profile of Texas Tech football?
I think two of the big things that we talk about and we'll talk about is he's got to continue to protect the football. I mean, if you look, he did a phenomenal job last year of taking care of the football. He limited his turnovers, interceptions, especially compared to how much we're going to throw the football. I think that's really important. But our next step is we have to be more explosive on offense, and that's something that, hey, look, check down is always awesome, and we don't want to put the ball, but we have to be more explosive. I think that Caleb Douglas brings that. I think Reggie Virgil, if you look at what he did last year in Miami of Ohio and being able to get him, he's a guy that really can push the field. Yep. We've got two really athletic tight ends, and so I think that his next step is, hey, we got to protect the football, and it's kind of also be aggressive of pushing the ball downfield. So, as a quarterback, sometimes they don't
take chances,
always.
but not that chance.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Coach, we talked about the star power that you guys have brought in and the depth just completely across your roster. I'm curious from a coach's perspective, with all of that talent, what position group are you most excited to watch come week one?
Well, I brought a kid that nobody's talking about, and I brought him for that reason, because I think he should be talked about, as Romello Height.
Yeah.
I think David Bailey, and he should, to a point, has overshadowed him a little bit whenever we got David, and maybe taking a little bit. Romello Height. So for me, I've coached this position. This is the last position I coached as a position coach, those edge guys, those outside linebackers. I'm really excited about our outside linebackers because if you look, David Bailey, our field end, David Bailey, Charles Esters, Braylon Rigsby. You turn on the other side, you've got Romello Height, Terrell Tillman, who really came on at the end of the year, redshirt freshman Cheto Ofila. I mean, those guys, we have a chance to really get after the quarterback. I'll tell you a funny story just real quick about why we ended up with David Bailey. What would Philly do? They just go get another defensive lineman.
That's it.
And that's really what, like, whenever we were talking about David Bailey and we were like, hey, we feel, and I was like, James Blanchard literally turned to me and said, what would the Philadelphia Eagles do? And he said, we don't get it done. Their defensive line.
And you talked about your edge players. You didn't even talk about your defensive tackles and linebackers. So those edge players are going to get one-on-one matchups all day long.
Yeah, well, Bailey, Hunter, Rodriguez. I mean,
Jacob Rodriguez was loving life. Ben Roberts, John Curry, those linebackers, because they're like, man, we're getting covered up, coach.
Daunting.
And you're right about Romello. Transfers in from Georgia Tech. He was a hell of a football player. I mean, things are looking good for Texas Tech. You appear to be happy up here. It's the happiest we're going to see a head coach all year is media days because they haven't done any games yet. But I was looking, I mean, I'll leave you with this, Coach. I mean, come September 20th through, you're going to get to see how deep this Big 12 is because that's a schedule that's going to challenge the best of what you have.
Yeah, it was funny. Somebody came out and said that we had the easiest schedule. And I started laughing. I said, you know, we go to Utah and we go to K-State, and we play
Arizona State.
We go to Arizona State, but we just got to talking about before we went on. We're fixing to play two of the most physical teams when we talk about K-State and BYU back to back.
And Willie Fritz, year 2 at Houston. I mean,
that guy. All he does is win. So this conference, it's really exciting because it is a deep conference. We always talk about that. But there's Arizona State brought everybody back, but Scatterbo.
Yeah.
They're a really good football team, and so. You see some really good teams. It's going to be a fun year in the Big 12.
It's going to be fun to watch you guys. Like I said, you're one of the trendy teams around the country to make some noise this year. We hope that noise comes to fruition.
Yes, sir.
Joey McGuire, head coach, Texas Tech. I don't know if anybody told you this, but you're going to be with me on SportsCenter Live later as well. So
awesome.
Don't go too far, Coach. Thank you so much. We'll be back live from Frisco, Texas. Big 12 Media Days at the Star